Hi everyone, and welcome to part one of Justin Baldoni's deposition transcript. Before we start the actual deposition, though, I just want to point out. So this was the email that was attached. just, just to highlight some irony here. The deposition transcript was literally attached to an email where they were discussing confidentiality designations. So the address, the brand new address, by the way, that Justin Baldoni only moved into a couple of months ago, that was highlighted, and it was highlighted to draw to Lively's attention that it was confidential. And the silly cow still put it on the public docket. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is I'm gonna skip past the initial, the start of the deposition. There's not much there anyway. It's just the usual who's there, what council, who are they representing. I'm trying to see who else is here. So present for this deposition was Jen Abel, Melissa Nathan, Jamie Heath, Steve Zarowitz, Laura Prather, Alice Buttrick. I'm not sure who that is. And then you had Veritext, the transcribers, and the videographer. So we obviously had all the lawyers. Then you have the kind of the exhibits list, and then you get into them all introducing themselves, the oath being sworn, and then just a load of preliminaries like, Mr. Baldoni, have you prepared for this deposition? Did you attend this person's deposition, this person's deposition? Have you read the transcript of this person's deposition, etc., etc., etc.? So I am going to go past all that because I am going to get past the confidential information, the new address. Okay. Now we're there. So my screen did go black there. Sorry, I was just getting to the page and making sure that I wasn't missing anything. I don't think I missed anything important, but there we are. We are now on back on the deposition transcript. This is going to be a really long deposition to read, so I'm doing it in roughly 1 hour videos. I'm anticipating it took me 9 1 hour videos to get through a 7-hour deposition of Nicole Alexander, so I'm expecting this to take some time because this was actually a 14-hour deposition. So I'm going to get through it as quickly as I can, but I'm just leaving it in small bite-sized chunk videos, and then I'll do it like a series on it before I move on to Jamie Heath's. Okay, so we are starting on page 22. Question. So we are, who we got? We got Shah. I think she's for Blake Lively. Yes, we have. And Alexandra Shapiro is with Justin Baldoni. Okay, question. You didn't speak to Jamie Heath about it. Justin, about the subject of my deposition? Or the fact that you would be having a deposition? Justin, oh yes, sorry, I misunderstood the question. I thought you meant like the content of my deposition. No problem. Anyone else? That I would be deposed? Sure. Jennifer Abel, my family, my wife, we had a prayer gathering last night with a lot of friends, so they were aware that I was being deposed, but that's all I can think of at the moment, yeah. Did you speak to Melissa Nathan about your deposition at all? I have not. Did you speak to Steve Sarowitz about your deposition at all? I did speak to Steve Sarowitz. We were together here at his deposition. When you spoke to Steve Sarowitz about your deposition, was there an attorney present? Yes. When you spoke to Jen Abel about your deposition, was there an attorney present? No, that was over the phone. What did you discuss with Jen Abel about your deposition? It wasn't a conversation about the deposition. It was like, you're going to do great. And she was letting me know she was going to be there. But there was no content that was discussed. Anything else? She might have said, just to keep being honest and shine your light or something to that extent. And when you spoke to Jamie Heath about your deposition, was there an attorney present? Jamie and I speak all the time, so it may have come up at one point when it was just us or our families together, but I don't know. Can you recall anything about your conversations with Jamie Heath about your deposition at any point in time when there were not attorneys present? Most of the relationship with me and Jamie is bolstering each other and just reminding, like, he like a brother reminds me who I am. I can't think of any other details. It's more like positive encouragement. These are pretty intense things, so kind of like a friend or a coach or you got this. Have you spoken to Jamie about his deposition? No, I'm first, so it's been focused on mine. How would you characterize your relationship with Jamie Heath? He's one of my closest friends. How long has been one of your closest friends? I've been married, I would say 15, 14 years, maybe 14 years. Were you friends before you began working together, or did you work together before you became friends? We were friends before we began working together. How would you characterize your relationship with Jen Abel? She's my publicist first, and then I think, I like to think of the people I work with as friends, so I would have considered her a friend. I think through this experience we've gotten closer, but I would have considered her my publicist. And how would you characterize your relationship with Melissa Nathan? A friendly publicist who, we don't know each other very well. I think this is the second time we met in person. But like everyone else in this case, I think that the bond of being in the situation we're in has maybe brought us closer together, but friendly. It's interesting that that Wayfarer parties have actually become solid friends through all of this, or Blake Lively has actually lost friends. Just an observation. Okay. Question. Prior to the deposition, did you have any role in helping to gather your documents, emails, texts, voice notes to be produced by your attorneys as discovery in this case? Can you ask that again? Sure. Are you aware that some of your documents, text messages, emails, etc., have been given to the plaintiffs in these cases as part of the discovery process? And then Shapiro interjects. Don't answer that to the extent it calls for information provided by your attorneys to you. Justin, yes. Did you have any role in helping to gather those materials? I think so. What was your role? I had to hand over my phone multiple times. I don't know. I think they are called like data scientists. That's what I can remember right now. There were, I think I had looked through for various emails. I don't remember the content of, to just make it sure that people had everything, or text that people had everything they needed. What is your preferred method of communication? Shapiro objects. And then the question is rephrased. I don't mean in an existential sense, I mean in a practical sense. Do you like to text? Do you like to email? Do you like to call on the phone? Justin, it depends. Am I in a lawsuit or not in a lawsuit when I'm communicating? Let's start with a lawsuit. Okay, text, but I'm pretty bad at it these days. So do you use Apple iMessage to communicate, right? Text message? Yes. Do you use email to communicate? I get a lot of emails, but I'm not good at responding to them. I do respond at times, but it's generally pretty short. Do you use WhatsApp messaging to communicate? I'm on WhatsApp threads with various people. Do you use Signal to communicate? Since the lawsuit? I do, yeah. Before the lawsuit? No. Since the lawsuit, who have you used Signal to communicate with? Mostly my attorneys, the people that are the defendants, some friends. Do you use Telegram to communicate? No. Do you ever send voice notes? Yeah. Do you ever record phone calls that you're a participant in? I certainly have from time to time. Do you do that frequently? No. Did you ever record any phone calls or Zooms with the participants in this case? In which case exactly? Either the Blake Lively case or the Stephanie Jones case? Yes. How many times would you estimate you recorded the phone calls or Zooms? 2 to 4, maybe 4 times, maybe, might be 3. Am I correct to understand that's 4 times ever that you've recorded phone calls or Zooms with any of the participants or witnesses or people involved in the events that underlie either of these litigations? I don't do it often, so I imagine it was around 4, 2 to 4. I'd have to take a lot of pausing to really think about that, which I think it's between 2 and 4. Why don't we say 4? How about in-person meetings? Shapiro objects. One that I can think of. What is that one? I recorded an improv acting session between Jenny Slate and Miss Lively. That you were also a participant in? I was. Where were you located when you recorded that? At our production offices in New Jersey. Where was Miss Slate located? In New Jersey. She was with you? Yeah. Where was Miss Lively located? I assume she was at her house, which is in New York. Other than that one in-person meeting, can you think of any other in-person meetings that you recorded that involved any of the participants in the events underlying these cases or had anything to do with the events underlying these cases? Shapiro objects. Justin, at the moment, I can't. Are you aware that your counsel produced to us last night 4 recordings? Shapiro objects to the extent it calls for information provided by the attorneys that appear to be recordings by you or phone calls or in-person meetings having to do with this case. Shapiro, same objection. Justin, I would imagine that they would. Are you aware that they were produced last night? Shapiro, objection, directing you not to answer anything to the extent it calls for information you only know from your attorneys. Justin, I can't answer. Are you going to follow your counsel's instruction? Yes, ma'am. Do you recall recording a phone call between you and any of the following? Ange Giannetti, Josh Greenstein, or Todd Black? Justin, Ange Giannetti. I don't know if Todd Black was on it, but I know Ange, yeah. Tell me what you recall about that phone call with Ange. I haven't listened to them. What I recall is feeling scared and almost feeling like what was happening was like I needed a witness. Because what was happening was just it felt kind of crazy. But I don't remember the content of the call. I assume it had to do with figuring out how to get through a difficult shoot. What was it at the time that felt kind of crazy to you? I don't know exactly what call or when it was recorded, so I don't know if I can answer that without more details. Do you remember why you recorded that call? Again, I just need to know what call you're referring to. Do you have a memory of a call that you recorded with Ange Giannetti? I have a vague memory, yes. With respect to that call, do you have a vague with respect to that call that you have a vague memory of, do you have any recollection of why you recorded that call? I think I felt powerless and scared and kind of lonely, I think. What did you intend to do with that recording? Nothing. I don't know if I would ever need it one day. Have you needed it? I haven't looked at it or listened to it, so apparently not. Did you tell her that you were recording the call? I didn't. Where were you located when you recorded the call? I don't know. I would have to know the date on the recording, then I could try to reverse engineer it. From your vague memory of doing this, give me your best estimate of where you were located. I honestly I don't know. Is it possible that you were in California? Shapiro objects. It's absolutely possible. Where was Ange located when you recorded the call? I assume she was in California. Do you have a memory of recording any calls with Josh Greenstein? No. Do you have a memory of recording any calls with Todd Black? Only if Todd were on a call with Ange. Where is Todd Black located? Shapiro objects. Like right now? No, in general, where does he live and work? He's often in New York. I believe he lives in LA, but he's often shooting movies. Does he maintain an office in LA? I don't know. Do you ever recall recording a call with Stephanie Jones? No. Do you recall ever recording a call with Jen Abel? I don't. Do you recall ever recording a call with Melissa Nathan? No. Other than the one improv session where Jenny Slate and Blake Lively were present that we spoke about, do you recall ever recording a call with Blake Lively? No. Do you recall ever recording a call with Tim Miller? I don't know who that is. Okay. Other than the one call that we've spoken about that you recorded with Ange Giannetti, you said you might have recorded 2 to 4 calls relevant to these litigations. Do you remember any others? Yes. Meaning, okay, sorry, please tell me about them. Do you want to finish your question? No, it's all right. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know, it's all right. I was trying to ask a better question, but do you mind re-asking the question? Other than the one call we've spoken about with Ange Giannetti, do you recall recording any other calls? Yes. Okay. Please tell me about those. I recorded a part of a call with Sean Levy. Who is Sean Levy? Sean Levy is a director and apparently a very close friend of Miss Lively and Mr. Reynolds. What do you recall about that call? I recall he wanted to speak to me, and as we began talking, I got the feeling that he was calling to kind of adjust or course correct, which made me feel a little uncomfortable. Adjust or course correct from what? I don't know. What do you mean when you say adjust or course correct? Just explain that to me a little bit more, please. It felt like he was being asked to call me, like he wasn't just calling to talk or check in. And what was he calling you about? The movie, It Ends With Us, and Miss Lively. Was he calling you about the tensions that were arising in relation to that movie? No. So what about the movie It Ends With Us was he calling you about? He was calling to give me advice, it appeared, on how to handle or navigate making a movie with Miss Lively. Fair enough. So working with Blake Lively comes with an entire customer support team that just call in and check in every now and again. Interesting. When in time was this? I could be wrong. I believe it was April of 23. Where were you located when you recorded the call? At my office in New Jersey. Where was he located when he was speaking to you on the call? I don't know. Did you inform him that you were recording the call? I did not. Other than these 2 calls we've now spoken about, one with Ange Giannetti and one with Sean Levy, can you remember any other phone calls that you recorded? It's not something I do often, so no, to be precise, I can't. Does Jamie Heath often record phone calls to your understanding? I'm unaware of what Jamie does on his own time. Does Jamie Heath ever record phone calls in the course of his work for Wayfarer to your understanding? I don't know. I know he has, but I don't know if it's regular practice. How do you know he has? Because I'm aware of at least a recording. Which recording is that? I'm aware of a recording of WME. WME agent or conversation that happened. How did you become aware of that recording? I believe I was told. By whom? I don't remember, but I would assume Jamie. Why was he telling you that he recorded that call? I can't speak to why he was telling me. Did you have any understanding from what he said to you of why he was telling you? Yes. And what was that understanding? I believe we were being threatened. By whom? By Mr. Reynolds and Miss Lively. Were you on that call? No. Do you know who was? I know someone from WME, I presume to be my former agent. I think Jennifer Abel was on the call. Anyone else? There may have been assistants on the WME side, or I'm not sure. When you say your former agent at WME, do you mean Danny Greenberg? I do. What's your understanding of that call, that it was a call between Jamie and Danny Greenberg? I actually don't know much about the call, so I can't answer that. To your understanding, how were you being threatened at the time by Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds? My understanding was that there were demands being made that I release some sort of public statement that had been drafted by Mr. Reynolds and Miss Lively and given to an agent. And I had been told that there were multiple calls that were incoming from the agency saying that if Justin doesn't release a statement, then Miss Lively and Mr. Reynolds will leave William Morris. I was told that they called the agency. I was told that the agency called numerous times, and this evidently was a phone call on which a statement was read that was prepared by Mr. Reynolds and Miss Lively. And the only other thing I remember about it was that it was inferred that if this wasn't done, the gloves would come off. When were you told? Let's start with this. When were you told about that phone call? I presume hours after it happened. And when were you told that the phone call had been recorded? I feel like early 2025, I think. Have you ever listened to that recording? I have not. Do you know where Jamie was located when he made that recording? I would assume in Los Angeles. Do you know if he informed any of the people on the call that he was recording it? I don't. Do you know where Danny Greenberg was located during that call? I don't. Do you know where Jen Abel was during that call? I wasn't there, so I don't. Can you describe for me in your own words what you do for a living? That's a good question. I'm a filmmaker, an actor, I've been an author, I hosted a podcast, and I'm part owner of a studio. I guess I'm an entertainment entrepreneur, maybe? The part owner of a studio, the studio you're referring to is Wayfarer, is that right? Yes, ma'am. What is your percentage ownership of Wayfarer? Somewhere between 20 and 25%, I think. And the remaining ownership, is that held by Steve Sarowitz? Yes. Does anyone else have part ownership in Wayfarer? I'm not sure contractually if anyone does, but I know there are two, might be three people that have like promises of equity or ghost stock, or I don't know if anything's been formalized. Who are those two or three people? Jamie Heath, Ahmed Kolachek, I hope I pronounced that right, and Tara Hanks, I believe. Going through each of them, do you have an understanding of why they have been promised ghost equity or some sort of promise of equity in Wayfarer? I believe so. Can you tell me? I'll start with Ahmed. Ahmed was my former partner at Wayfarer Entertainment, which was a small production company that I had started years ago, and he's an independent producer now. But I didn't feel like I could have started Wayfarer without his help with Wayfarer Entertainment, so I gave him a small piece of my own equity. Jamie Heath took a low salary compared probably to a lot of other folks and has lived and breathed the company. And Steve and I felt he deserved a small piece of equity. And I'm still unsure if Tara Hanks officially has any or that any was promised. But when she joined, I think it was discussed, but I don't have a full memory of it. Would you say it's accurate that you and Steve Sarowitz co-founded Wayfarer Studios? Yeah, I think so. When did that happen? I believe officially it was around the time of the pandemic, so early 2020. But I know it was starting to happen, like there were conversations in 2019. I just don't know the exact date, like date the papers were signed or things like that. And how did that come about? Starting the Wayfarer Studios? Uh-huh. I'd always wanted to have the means to create movies, and I thought could make a difference and help people. And Steve had a very similar worldview, and he wanted to make movies that could help people too. So we started Wayfarer. How did you come to know Steve Sarowitz? I first met Steve when he was making a film called The Gate. It was a story of the Bab, who was a central figure in the Baha'i faith. And we were introduced because said he didn't know what he was doing and needed some guidance. And so I helped him out and we became friends. And we have a shared faith. Do you know approximately when this was that you were introduced to him? I don't. I feel like maybe 2016 or 2017. Would you say there's a common thesis or mission at Wayfarer Studios behind the types of projects that you take on? That's something we aspire to. What is it? To make movies that make people feel, films that can help people heal. We can bring people together, help people recognize their shared humanity. How many films has Wayfarer made? I'm going to fail this test. Does that include films we didn't make that we invested in? Yes. And why don't you explain to me which are which? Our business model is a little fluid in that we will finance and make films, and also we will join other films that are being made and then finance them or be minority partners in films if they need like finishing funds. I don't know. This is my answer, unfortunately. Sticking with the number of films that Wayfarer has financed and made itself, can you give me a rough number or list any of them? Financed and made. I feel like we're in the, again, I can't be held to this because, like, I'm going to guess in the 15 number. And then in terms of films that Wayfarer has invested in or provided finishing funds for, can you give me a rough number or name any of them? Garfield, Angry Birds. Oh, I did not know that. I love Angry Birds. There are a few others that I just can't. I apologize. I can't think of the names right now. In terms of the 15 or so films that Wayfarer has financed and made itself, can you give me any names? Sure, Clouds. And these aren't just us alone. We had partners in a lot of these. Clouds, Nice Indian Boy, Code 3, The Senior, Empire Waste, Black is Beautiful. I think it's called Blackballed, Eleanor the Great. It ends with us. I forget the name, but it's a film about the effects of illegalization of marijuana, but I don't remember the name. That's what I got right now. 5 Feet Apart? That was not Wayfarer Studios. Who did that film? CBS Films, but Wayfarer Entertainment got a production credit, so there was no financing. Is Wayfarer Studios profitable? I don't know. And I don't know how we would quantify that. I don't believe so. Are you the co-chairman of Wayfarer Studios? I am. Do you hold any other titles with respect to Wayfarer Studios? I do not. And what are your responsibilities as co-chairman of Wayfarer Studios? Mostly thinking of the future direction of where I would like to see the company going. I assist with creative. That's pretty much it. Do you have any responsibilities with respect to the financials of Wayfarer Studios? No. Do you have any responsibilities with respect to the day-to-day operation of Wayfarer Studios? No. Would you say that Sarowitz is the money guy and you're the creative force behind Wayfarer Studios? Sarowitz is quite creative, But I think that would be a fair observation or summary of how the relationship started. Has that changed over time? Somewhat, I believe. Steve's gotten much more involved in the creative, and I think that's, yeah. Do you have any responsibilities for Wayfarer's contractual relationships? No. Do you ever review contracts before Wayfarer assigns them? No. Do you have to approve any of the contracts that Wayfarer enters into before they're entered into? No. Do you always star in the films that Wayfarer produces? No. How many of them have you starred in? 1. It ends with us? Yes. Do you always direct the films that Wayfarer produces? No. How many have you directed? 2. Which ones? Clouds, and it ends with us. How long were you a working actor before you founded Wayfarer Studios? I've been a working actor for, well, I didn't work this year, but if we include this year, 21 years. And this is embarrassing math. 2019, 5, 6, so 15 years or so. You mentioned a share faith with Steve Sauritz. What faith is that? The Baha'i faith. How did you come to the Baha'i faith? I was born into the Baha'i faith. And then at 15, as is customary for all Baha'is, I was given the choice to decide if I felt I was a Baha'i. I believe in the independent investigation of truth. So the idea that we don't just become something because our parents are. So at 15, I decided that I was a Baha'i. Do you think the tenets of that faith influenced the mission or thesis behind Wayfarer Studios? I believe so, yeah. How so? As Baha'is, we're told that our work should be a form of service. And so I've always operated with the belief that whatever it is that I do, whether it's in entertainment or anything else, I wanted to find a way for it to be of service. And with Wayfarer Studios, we just wanted to apply some of those same tenets to the studio. The idea that we can create things that elevate consciousness in some abstract way, but without being preachy, and with very universal themes like the elimination of prejudice, the belief in equality, the telling of stories that maybe don't always get told because Hollywood doesn't maybe feel that they are worth telling. So in that sense, I believe that our faith has influenced. Over the course of your career, or otherwise, have you received or been through any media training? I went through some media training on 5 Feet Apart. I'm not sure if I did any media training for It Ends With Us. I don't believe I did. Okay. Other than when you went through media training in relation to 5 Feet Apart, can you think of any other times that you've received or been through any media training? As I sit here right now, I can't. Over the course of your career or otherwise, have you had any formal acting training? Like acting classes? Yes. Yes. How about directing? No. Over the course of your career or otherwise at any time, have you ever received or been through any sort of leadership training? I think I've had coaching, but I can't think of any formal training. Can you describe for me that coaching? I can't remember much about it, unfortunately. Do you know about when that was? In my 20s, my late 20s maybe. And other than this leadership coaching, have you ever been to any leadership seminars or programs? Like as an attendee? Yes. I can't think of any right now. In any other role than an attendee? I started speaking in my 30s, and I don't know if I ever spoke at one or not. Do you know a gentleman by the name of Labid Aziz? Yes. Who is he? Labid? Yes. He was the original COO of Wayfarer Studios. And when did he cease operating in that role? I think about a year into his role. Was he a good COO? I'm not sure I'm qualified to judge what a good COO is. Did you ever have any concerns personally with him in his role as COO? I did. What were those concerns? I felt he would often promise things in deal making that weren't possible. He was a bit of a wheeler and dealer. And there were certain instances where I did not feel he was telling the truth. Can you identify any of those incidents for me? I just remember getting phone calls saying like Labid said this or Labid promised this and being very confused because that wasn't something that he could be promising. It was important to me that we were always honest and that we didn't enter into deals with people and make promises that we couldn't keep. And I didn't always feel that integrity didn't always feel he operated with that integrity. Can you give me any specific examples? The one I can think of right now is my dad is also in the entertainment business. He was one of the founding fathers of what is called product placement. And I always wanted to work with my dad, and it's a sweet relationship. But I remember my dad told me that he had promised Labid, or Labid had promised him, that he could build out an entire product placement division of Wayfarer Studios and that he would put him on a salary. And I think he got my dad's hopes up, which, my dad, was 70 and that wasn't ever part of the plan. And I didn't like that he was promising things to even my own family. And yet I believed that he thought that he could maybe do those things. But the proper protocol was not followed of like, do we want to build a division? So I didn't feel like that was honest. That's what I can think of right now. Other than that, can you think of any other specific examples? I can't. Okay, I think now is probably a good time for a break, if you would like one. Justin, I have to pee, so that's great. Shapiro, I just want to put on record, I should have done this before, that we're designating the entire deposition confidential pursuant to the protective order. Understood. Thank you. And then they go off the record. Okay. So I think I'll just do a couple more pages because we're not too far in. Okay, so question. I want to come back to your use of Signal. I think you testified earlier this morning that you had never used Signal before Blake's complaint was filed in December of 2024. Am I getting that correct? I had the app, but I wasn't a participant, like doing anything on the app. Do you recall when you downloaded the app? I recall 2 different times that I had downloaded the app. The first time I had ever heard of Signal was from Stephanie Jones. And I don't know how long ago that was. I feel like I close my eyes sometimes because I visualize, so I understand where I am. I believe it was around 2020. She had told me it was her preferred method of communication. Interesting. I thought she warned them off Signal. I'm sure I've seen a text message of her telling them that it's not good to use Signal. Okay. She had told me it was her preferred method of communication, but we never communicated on Signal. And then I think your phone just gets rid of it when you don't use it. And then I downloaded it again. I joined a men's group and they had their group on Signal. But then I was unable to join officially the men's group, so I never joined that group on Signal. And then, so it was just kind of an app that was there. And then I downloaded it probably the day after or 2 days after the New York Times article and the lawsuit. When you downloaded it a day or 2 after the New York Times article and the lawsuit, why did you do that? I believe it was a group decision to move all of our chats to Signal. Who was in that group that made that group decision? My attorneys. I believe all the defendants here. Melissa Nathan? Yes. Jen Abel? Yes. Jamie Heath? Yes. Steve Sarowitz? I think he eventually joined, yes, but not at first. Steve is always in his own world. Jed Wallace? Yes, eventually, yes. But not at first. I had never met Jed, so I don't know if he was originally on there at the time. You knew who he was? I knew who he was. I'd heard the name Jed, but I learned who he was around the time of the lawsuit, yeah. What do you mean you learned who he was? Just around the time of the lawsuit. And then Shapiro, Mr. Baldoni, don't really reveal any information that you learned from your attorneys. Justin, I learned his last name and that he was being sued, and that's when we met. When you say that's when you met, what do you mean? That's the first time we ever met? In person? No, we never met in person. So when you say that's the first time you ever met, do you mean that's the first time you were ever on a direct communication with him? Yeah. Prior to that point in time, do you recall being put on any communications, whether phone call, in-person meeting, signal, text, email, or any other form of communication where Jed Wallace was also a participant that you were on? No. Before that time, do you recall ever hearing his name before? Objection. Whether orally, on a phone call, in a text message, in an email, or through any other form of communication? Objection. Yes. When? I believe around the time that no, after I met Melissa Nathan. Melissa Nathan introduced you to Jed Wallace, is that right? I was never introduced to Jed Wallace. Melissa Nathan is the first person who ever mentioned the name Jed Wallace to you, is that right? No, I don't believe so. Who is? I think it was Jamie. I think Jamie, yes. What do you recall about that instance where Jamie first mentioned the name Jed Wallace to you? I recall a brief conversation around Melissa's employees, and it was around that same conversation. I think I heard the name Brianna and Jed, like they were part of a team or something. Was it your understanding around the time of that conversation that Jed was one of Melissa's employees or associated with Melissa's work? And then Joel Glover, who is Jed Wallace's lawyer, objects to form. I don't think I had an understanding. I think I wasn't thinking about anything like that. Why were you not thinking about anything like that? I wasn't thinking about who was an employee or an associate. It was just, this is a team. And it was your understanding around the time of that conversation that as part of the team that was being brought on to help you with crisis comms, Jed Wallace would be part of that team, right? Yes. And you gained that understanding, at least at first, from Jamie Heath, is that right? I believe so, yes. And your understanding around the time of that conversation was that Jed Wallace was going to come on as part of the crisis communications team to handle the social and digital side of things, right? And then Glover objects to form, Shapiro objects. Justin, I'm not sure I was aware of that. I was just hiring crisis PR. And you had no awareness or understanding of what Jed did or was to do for you in the realm of crisis PR? I still don't think I know what Jed does. Why do you say that? I'd like to think of myself as someone who is tech savvy or who understands the internet, but I don't. I guess I still don't think I really have ever grasped what he does. And that's because what he does with respect to the internet is highly technical and complicated, right? Glover objects to form. Justin, maybe. What is it that you don't grasp about what he does with the internet? I like him to be someone, I know him to be someone that sends a lot of reports, like a lot of reports. So what kind of reports? Like somebody who spends a lot of time on the internet Googling and looking up anything that is involved with this case or my name, and then presenting those reports and saying, this is what's happening. What is so complicated about that? Shapiro objects. Well, I don't know if that's what his job is. That's what I don't understand. How many of those such reports has he ever sent to you? Shapiro objects. I think that's privilege. Does he ever send these reports to you at the same time as he sends them to your attorneys? I've never gotten an individual report, no. So why do you know him as someone who sends reports? Shapiro instructs you not to, and then Justin says, yeah, I can't answer that. Shapiro answer to the extent that the answer comes from communications with your attorneys. Did you come to the understanding that Jed Wallace sends such reports before Blake's lawsuit was filed on December 20th? No. You hired Jed Wallace to be part of your crisis comms team in August of 2024. Shapiro objects. Glover objects to form. Justin, I didn't hire Jed Wallace. Who did? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I assume. Don't assume anything. Justin, Wayfarer. You understood Jed Wallace to be working, at least in part, on your behalf with Melissa Nathan's team during this crisis period in August of 2024, right? Glover objects to form. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know if I understood that. What did you understand him to be doing in that time period? Shapiro, objection. I don't know, whatever Melissa was doing. Did you have attorneys involved in that time period? No. Shapiro objects to form. When did you first get attorneys involved? December 21st or 22nd? Did you have any understanding from August of 2024 to December that Jed was creating any such reports for you? Glover objects to form. Justin, no. You only learned that after the lawsuits were filed in December of 2024. Yeah. When you learned that Jed was creating such reports in December of 2024, was it your understanding that he had only just started creating these reports after the lawsuit was filed, or that he had been creating them earlier? Shapiro objects. Glover also objects to form. And then Shapiro says, and I direct you not to answer to the extent any information you have only comes from your attorneys. Justin, I don't know. You don't know one way or another whether Jed only started creating these reports in December of 2024 or whether he had been creating them earlier. Glover, objection. Shapiro, objection. And again, don't reveal any privileged communications of anything you learned from your lawyers. Justin, I genuinely don't know. You mentioned earlier that when you started using Signal to communicate after the lawsuits were filed, it was a group decision that involved a number of people and your attorneys. Yes. Which attorneys? Am I allowed to answer attorneys? Baldoni, am I allowed to answer attorneys? Shapiro, yeah, no, I'm going to direct you not to answer that question. You're going to direct him not to give me the names of which attorneys were involved in the Signal chats? That's not what you asked. You were asking him about his discussions with his attorneys about using Signal. Who were the attorneys that were involved in the Signal chats? Shapiro, you can answer the names. Justin, Brian Friedman. You can totally get it. It's okay. Brian, Summer, Mitra, Jason, Teresa, Alexandra, and Jonathan weren't on the team. Yeah. Whose idea was it to move your communications to Signal? I don't remember. Was it yours? I don't know. Is it possible that it was your idea? Shapiro objects. Justin, yeah. Did you understand the purpose of moving those communications to Signal to be that the messages would disappear? I understand that to be part of it, yeah. What was the other part of it? Getting hacked. You had concerns about your phones being hacked? Yeah. Okay. Privacy. In the time starting when the lawsuits were filed in December 2024 that you began using Signal with this group of people that you've described, in every single message that you sent or received, was there at least one attorney present on that message thread? Shapiro, objection form. Justin, I'm sorry, it was a long question. Since you began using Signal from the time these lawsuits were filed, was there an attorney present on every single message that you sent or received? Was an attorney present in every message I sent? No, because there were friends that reached out to me on Signal too. Which friends? That friend still trying to get me. And then Justin says, is your son okay? The stenographer then says, sorry, yeah, he's fine. Just need to, these are brand new iPads. I apologize. Shah, it's okay. Let us know if you want to take a break. And the stenographer says, okay. Shapiro, what was the question? Which friends? Justin, which friends texted me on Signal? I remember my friend Brett texted me, my friend John. I wasn't responding to very many texts during that time. Ahmed? And the stenographer says, sorry, Ahmed? Justin, Ahmed, sorry, I lost my voice this weekend. Stenographer, that's okay. Justin, those are the three I can think about that are not in this lawsuit right now, of friends specific to your question. Anyone else? Mitz from Wayfarer. And can you repeat that question one more time? I just want to. Who can you recall, whether friends or otherwise, who texted you on Signal that was not part of your defendants and attorneys group? That's what I can think of right now. If more come to me later, I will share. But they are not. When friends texted me, it was not about the lawsuit. They were just texting me. Were they in the habit of texting you on Signal before this? No. So they only started texting you on Signal after the lawsuits were filed? Yes. And they were texting to check in on how you were doing in the wake of the lawsuits being filed? Shapiro objects. Yes. Did you respond to any of those texts? I'm sure I did. I had asked them to text only on Signal. You had asked them to text only on Signal? Had they texted you by a non-Signal method ahead of that? They had called. I was really not in a good place. I didn't want to talk. Did you have your cell phone on you right now? Sorry, do you have your cell phone on you right now? I don't. Do you have your cell phone in the back room? Is it a bag somewhere, probably? Do you always set your Signal messages to auto-delete? I set them to whatever the Signal auto thing is. Are you aware that when message threads originate on the Signal app, they do not self-delete, and you have to go in and for each message thread, if you want to delete it in a certain amount of time, you have to go in and change that setting? Shapiro objects. I thought it was the opposite, but now I know. I could be mistaken. Yeah, I thought it was, it starts auto-delete and then you have to stop it from. But you could be right and I could be wrong. Do all of your Signal message threads auto-delete? No. There are some that do not auto-delete. I believe none of our, if I'm allowed to say, none of our legal threads auto-delete. Any of the non-legal threads that do not auto-delete? Shapiro objects. I'm sure there are some. Have you manually deleted any Signal messages since these lawsuits were filed? No. During a break in this deposition, can you look at your phone, open your Signal app, and see whether there are any non-legal Signal threads still present on there? Shapiro, I'm going to object to that. I'm going to object to that. Shah, you're going to instruct him not to do that? Shapiro, yes. Shah, okay. Would you be capable of doing that if not for your lawyer's instruction? I would hope so, with my hands and fingers and brain capacity. Are you going to follow your lawyer's instruction? I think I probably should. What do you recall texting with Mitz at Wayfarer about on Signal? This whole time period was crazy, so give me a second. I believe I was sending Mitz screenshots of a lot of old text messages. Which old text messages? Things that I believed would help me in telling the truth about what actually happened. Text messages with Blake? No. Text messages with Stephanie Jones? I don't believe I shared any of those with Mitts, no. Text messages with Jen Abel? No. Text messages with Melissa Nathan? I didn't have any text messages with Melissa Nathan. Text messages with whom then? My memory. Text messages with my health coach. Text messages with Don Saladino. Who is your health coach? Jennifer Benson. What does she generally do for you? She's not my current health coach. What should she currently do for you when she was your health coach? She tried to keep me healthy. How? Supplements, peptides, helping my immune system. What about your text messages with your health coach did you believe at that time would help you explain the truth of what happened? If my memory is correct, I was being accused of many things, but one of them was like putting Miss Lively on a phone call with a dietitian, which was a lie, and an extreme distortion of the truth. Who is Dan Saladino? He's a personal trainer. Is he Miss Lively's personal trainer? I would assume so. And what about your text messages with him did you believe at the time would help you demonstrate the truth of what happened? The communication between him and myself that showed that he was also working with me. How many screenshots do you recall sending to Mitts? I wish I could tell you. I don't know. More than 2? Yeah. More than 5? Probably. More than 10? That was a very hard time. I will say yes. And we are just about coming up to 1 hour, so I am going to move and continue this on part 2. I will see you there.